we're going to practice with that, this idea of balance and working to get that heating, active energy to balance along with that cooler. I don't want to say inactivity as if you're not doing anything, but that more restful energy. And seeing if we can get those two to get a little bit closer together in quality, if not in length, just like the day. So now you have an idea of where we're going. As we do, I would like you to begin your practice by first finding yourself in any comfortable seated position. I'm sitting on the floor. You may choose to sit in a chair. For what we're going to do breath work wise, I would recommend that you start in a seated position. And if for the meditation part you want to lie down, go ahead and just set your space up to make that transition as seamless as possible. And then as we get started, we're just going to check in with those 5 senses to become aware, to acknowledge what's happening around us, so that as we work to pull in our senses, we're not distracted by the outside world, to the extent that we can do that. I know it's not easy. So go ahead, take your vision around, look around, notice what's happening in your place and your space where you're settling today. Notice if there's something that you see. It could be something that you're noticing that maybe you wanted to get to, but you haven't gotten to yet. Perhaps it's another person, perhaps it's children or pets. Without getting locked up in the story, can you just acknowledge that they're there? And just know that for the next 20 or so minutes, there's nothing that needs to be done with that. I say that as my lights start to flicker. Sorry about that. So now, what do you hear? What do you hear in your place, in your space, maybe even outside? Just noticing what you're hearing. I personally am sitting close to a window, so I can hear a lot of what's happening outside. But again, I'm just acknowledging that I know what's happening outside. I don't need to get tied up in the story of it. And you may already begin to sense that there's this almost easefulness that comes over when we just begin to notice what we see and what we hear. 2 very powerful senses, right? And so can you just let yourself be here? As you begin to transition, noticing, do you detect any scents, any smells in your space? Depending on the time that you're joining us, there could be the lingering sense of food. Perhaps you just came from outside and there's the residual smell of perhaps plants or trees or other things that happen outside. So again, we're just letting our noticing. And then along with the smell comes the taste. So just allow yourself to check in. I feel like this sense is the easiest one to gloss over, that we don't always allow ourselves to linger in the sense of taste. But maybe notice, is there something that's staying here with you? The last beverage you enjoyed, the last meal you consumed. Just let yourself check in with that so it doesn't become a distraction. And then we come now to the sense of touch. You may notice that my hands have been resting palms down on my thighs so I can feel the weight and the warmth, the residual effects of just having my hands resting over my knees. But there's also the sense of touch of other parts like the feet, the sits bones, perhaps the back, if you're leaning against something. So just allow yourself to check in with what's touching something. Maybe allowing yourself to notice for the first time any sensations that come by resting your feet on the floor. Maybe the outer edges if you're seated in a cross-legged position. Maybe the soles of the feet if you're sitting in a chair. And so now we've checked in, we've brought awareness to what's happening around us. So again, you may begin to notice that as we pull in that awareness from the outside, perhaps you're noticing a little bit of shift in your energy. You may notice that there's this increased amount of calm. I'm not saying that we're there yet. I'm just asking you to notice any shifts. And before we move any further, let's take a few, meaning let's take 3 together, arriving breaths to help move any stagnant energy that may be just sitting with us today. So as you next inhale, it's an inhale through the nose. As you exhale, it's an audible sigh out, like you're just releasing anything that's not serving you. Inhale, fill the body full of the breath, which brings in the nutrients for the cells. Exhale out all the toxins, anything that's not helping you today. Inhale one more time through the nose. Exhale, let it go. And just settle here for a moment. Again, just checking in with any shifts. And it's at this time that I invite you that maybe your eyes want to close, or maybe the gaze wants to soften, even divert away from your device. Just notice if that applies to you. And the first thing we're going to do to check in with our balance is to just begin to sway from side to side. So it doesn't matter which side you choose first. It does not matter how big or how small, but maybe you notice the sways first in the torso, the low back, the hip region. Maybe you notice that there's some stiffness, and you begin to play with what does it feel to add more movement, perhaps getting the neck involved and the head. And let this just be a gentle sway from side to side. So we're playing around with this idea of aligning ourselves with the events of what's to come with the summer solstice. That equal parts the longest day of our year. And in our own bodies, it's the right side of our body that's said to house the energy that corresponds to solar energy, the sun, that heating action type energy. And it's that left side that's said to correspond with the lunar, that cooling, more restorative type activity. So as you sway from side to side, maybe you notice one is a little bit more prevalent than the other. And then maybe just let yourself check in. Have you felt recently like your activity levels, that desire to move, to get things done, has maybe been a little bit stronger than the desire to sort of just be the cooler, calmer, more relaxing and restoring type energy. And there's no right answer. It's just checking in, noticing how what we're doing with our mind is essentially manifesting and playing itself out in the body. And then we just begin to come to stillness. Let yourself settle into what feels like your center, your balance. And just notice, perhaps it feels internally like you're still swaying from side to side, even though the body is settling. And now we'll just begin to roll the shoulders back, shine the heart forward, maybe gaze up, lengthening through the whole length of the front body. And as we exhale, we're just going to tuck the chin, roll the shoulders forward, and begin to hollow out the stomach so that we feel more of this along the back body. So again, we went from side to side, that solar and lunar energy. And now we're working with the activity of the action, the heating, forward motion. Like when you're ready to do something, you put yourself forward into it. And balancing that with that desire to kind of close ourselves off, to not really want to move. And so these are the forward energies that drive us. And then that backward energy that kind of holds us back, that restraint. And just noticing again, have you been feeling this in your body? Have you been feeling a mix of wanting to really get going and move forward? Or have you been feeling more like you want to curl in? And we're working to find in these gentle movements that center. So once you've played with this a few rounds, just begin to let yourself again settle into what feels like balance, center for you. Again, letting the body sort of show us how the thoughts of the mind are feeling in the body. And then go ahead and, if the eyes are not closed, definitely check in and make sure that the gaze is soft. Because we're going to move now our awareness into noticing the breath. This is very subtle. So it might be a little challenging if the eyes are open and we're looking around. But you can definitely keep your gaze available should you have any questions about what we're doing next. And all I'm going to do is just flip my palms that are now facing up. And I'm going to gently curl my fingertips in towards my palms in a gentle fist, but not really pulling those fingers in. I'm just letting the fingertips rest in the palms. And then we begin to just let our awareness check in with, where does it feel like the breath is moving in? Which nostril? If you've never played around with this before, it's quite interesting to check in and notice that the breath will move more predominantly through one nostril than the other. And so we just check in, and it's not constant. The emphasis on which nostril the air moves changes throughout the day. So if you are doing this now and you notice that it's moving in through one nostril more predominantly than the other, check in about an hour or so from now and notice how it's changed. The other nostril will most likely be dominant. So once you have tuned in and become aware of which nostril the breath is moving into, go ahead and open up the fingers on the hand corresponding with that nostril. And if you're not sure but you're interested in just playing around with this process to begin with, you could always just start with the right nostril and open the right hand. Just imagining that breath moving in through that nostril if you cannot feel it actually moving in. And we're just going to play around with opening and closing our palms as it corresponds to the breath in. So as you inhale and you feel the breath move in through the right nostril, the hand is open. And then when you get to the top of the inhale, you gently close those right fingertips back in. Feel a natural pause in your breath. Imagine the breath moving from the right to the left or the left to the right, depending on which side you started on. And then as you breathe out the opposite nostril, those corresponding fingers with the breath out in that nostril open up. With the fingers unfurled, we breathe back in through that nostril we just breathed out of. And as we get to the top of our breath, we gently curl those fingers back in, pausing with the breath. And then as we're ready to exhale, we gently shift our breath over to the other nostril, and breathe out and open up those corresponding fingers. That's the completion of one round. So let's do that 2 more times on our own. Breathing in through the nostril with the palm that's open. Curl the fingers in as you get to the top of your inhale. Imagine your breath shifting over to the other nostril, and as you exhale, open up those other fingers, let the breath move out that nostril. Inhale through the nostril with the palm open. Allow the fingers to curl in as you get to the top of the inhale and pause. Shift the breath over to the other nostril, and then exhale out, open up the fingers. That's round 2. Try this again on your own. I'll be quiet so that you can experience this on your own. And once you finish that round, just let yourself sit, perhaps with the palms facing back down, just resting over your knees, and let yourself tune into the sensations, the feelings, the experience of this practice. Maybe even notice the characteristics of the inhale and then the characteristics of the exhale. How does the temperature of the breath in feel? How does the temperature of the exhale feel? What's the texture of the breath in? The texture of the breath out. Notice the length of the inhale in as compared to the length of the exhale out. And then just let everything go. Just noticing how you feel without a right way to feel. And then slowly begin to deepen your breath, feeling where the breath moves into. Maybe the upper chest, the ribs, or the low belly. Notice how the breath moves out. Slowly allow your chin to tuck towards your chest. Take the chin to the right shoulder, back to center, and then over to the left shoulder. Just releasing any remaining stress or strain. Come back to neutral, and then slowly allow the eyes to butterfly open. Just let your awareness rest on a point in front of you. And then bring your gaze up, back into your space, and just notice what's happening around you and how maybe things may have shifted. The thing I love about this practice that we just worked on, especially with the hand work and checking in, is it's a practice intended to bring balance when we're feeling thrown off of balance. It doesn't have to be just at the time of the summer solstice. The other great thing about it is you can do it from anywhere with about as little interruption or becoming as obvious about it as other practices, because it's just a simple hand movement, opening and closing of the fingers and the swaying side to side and front and back. It's a very accessible practice when we feel ourselves being knocked off balance. So before we end our time here, just go ahead and again, just notice, maybe take a few shifts from side to side, noticing if anything has changed for you. Let yourself come forward and back, finding that balance between doing and not doing at all. That heating energy and that cooling energy. Allowing ourselves to work from that Goldilocks just right center. And with that, I thank you all for joining me today for our meditation. I hope that it serves you as you move forward throughout the day and through the rest of the week. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I will see you again here, same time, same place next week. Until then, have a great day, and thank you for joining.